Let's begin by telling you that the federal government of Nigeria has advised organized labor to consider the broader economic implications of its push for what it called an unrealistic higher national minimum wage. Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, who gave the admonition while speaking at the opening of the 2024 Synod of the Charismatic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria in Abuja, noted that the 250,000 naira minimum wage demanded by labor could undermine the economy, lead to mass retrenchment of workers, and jeopardize the welfare of Nigerians. The minister emphasized the importance of a realistic wage system that safeguards against mass retrenchment while addressing workers' needs. Idris reiterated the government's dedication to reassessing the minimum wage, but cautioned against demands that could disrupt the economy. To discuss this, I'm joined by business and economic analyst Eizu Uwaoma. Hello, Eizu. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. There seems to be a problem with your network, but let's try this. Now, can you tell us how credible is the government's assertion that a significant wage increase would lead to mass retrenchment of workers?
Absolutely. I like the paradigm shift between inflation versus minimum wage. I like the fact that it's shifting from inflation versus minimum wage to minimum wage versus unemployment. So no longer minimum wage versus inflation. But let's not forget that even while the minimum wage was stagnant for a while, we still had inflation. Now, inflation today is driven by forex trading, right, which is imbalance in international trade, floating of the naira, and the drastic and sudden removal of subsidy, which we had is back from the back door, right? So yes, absolutely, the government is right. Increase minimum wage, it has a corresponding and directly proportional effect on unemployment. Don't forget that minimum wage contributes to what you call cost push inflation, which is inflation that is driven by high cost of production. Right. And what they don't also tell us is that unemployment will not just be government, but it will also be the private sector. For example, if you force me to pay the lowest person 200,000 at my office, some people have to go to balance that out. Right. So absolutely, I think that people have to understand and be educated on the direct proportionality between minimum wage increase, drastic minimum wage increase, not from 30 to 60, but says 30 to 250, and what that does to unemployment, right? What they should be fighting for is wage inequality. There's too much inequality between the guy who is a director in a parastatal, who is literally not doing anything, not even living on a salary, thanks to corruption, right? And the person who is driving him, who is earning that minimum wage. The gap between the guy on the streets and the president that has an average of 40 cars in his convoy when he's traveling or when he's going, that's the wage inequality that should be fought, right? More than the concept of let's just increase. Increase in minimum wage means increase in income, but doesn't exactly mean increase in spending power. It's a bit technical, right? Fiscal policy is a real concern, and I think those are the things that you should look at. The government is almost looking like what happens when you give a teenager whiskey and a car key, just reckless driving. There's not been any undertone that shows that they want to reduce government spending, that there's tax cuts on certain industries. And I think that is the thing that the labor part, the labor institutions and all of the other parties that are supposed to play opposition to bring it to the table. It's perfect time to talk about the waste in government, the delay in government, and the inconsistency in whatever they are promising people.
All right, now, Eizu, now beyond wage increases, how effective are the government's alternative relief measures, such as the presidential compressed natural gas program, in mitigating the cost of living for Nigerians?
Let's isolate the issue of petrol and the alternative, which is the gas alternative that they're trying to produce. Absolute idea, fantastic idea. But we know that the only thing more important than doing the dreaming is dreaming the doing. So good dreams, but how are they executing, right? How many cars are we seeing on the streets that have been converted from petrol to compressed natural gas thanks to that initiative? Nigerians have trust issues with their government, and that has to be sorted out by consistency of what you say you will do. right? I think those are real issues that should be sorted out. But that's just on a transport, on one perspective. How about industrial issues, right? Diesel is a deeper problem for businesses than petrol, right? Can there be subsidies on stuff like that? And is there a sincerity of purpose to how these palliatives are being turned out? I think that the real concern and the real issues that needs to be sorted out. But if they ruthlessly do what they promise, right, it would create the impact that they're looking for. But me and you know what the history holds, what that suggests for the future.
All right, now, but what could be a realistic and more sustainable minimum wage increase, that balances workers' needs with the economic stability? And that's according to economic experts like yourself.
Okay, so there's a lot of financial model and simulation that has to be done, right? I think it's pretty fair to peg it at about 100, in my own opinion. And my own opinion of the spiral effect, wage spiral effect on inflation, right? If you peg it anything more than that, inflation would be skyrocketing to the point where your naira would almost be meaningless, right? So in my own opinion, I think 100 would be something, 100,000 naira would be something that is probably more decent. And that cannot be done in isolation. It has to be done at the same time you're reducing the inequality in wages. For example, there's nothing wrong with government saying that it's going to affect employment. But we need to really ask ourselves, why should the government be the biggest employer of labor in a country that is supposed to be capitalist driven, right? That means the government is literally using employment as palliative, as against employment as a productivity tool. Have you gone to the government establishment lately? 4 or 5 people are doing the work of one person, right? Which basically creates a lot of redundancy and a lot of waste. And there are too many people high up there who should have even been asked to retire or resign with fat salaries, with 3, 4, 5 convoys, permanent secretaries, and a lot of all those who literally, in my own opinion, should be contributing their expertise in private sector as people who are experienced as former regulators. So there's nothing wrong with, I'm not going to use the word unemployment, but balancing productivity and employment. If that requires retrenchment, what you create a proper exit plan for them, that might just make sense. It's technical to sound, but that's the right move.
All right. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us on this, Eizu. We appreciate you for your time.